Great to have you, Eric. For those of you who don't know who Eric is, he's the author behind the famous Almanack of Naval. Personally, one of my favorite books. They've sold over 1 million copies. He's also the founder of Scribe, which helps entrepreneurs and experts write, publish, and market amazing books. He's also got his foot dipped in the VC world as well, being a GP at Rolling Fun. And you've spent the last decade exploring ideas at the intersection of, entrepreneurship, technology, personal development, and writing. So super excited to go deep on all that today, Eric.
Go deep on me. Let's do it.
Let's get into it. What?
It's a good thing Bryce is muted. He's fucking losing it.
Dying.
I feel like this is gonna be a really funny episode. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
That's what it's about. We got to make people laugh on their way to work every day. Awesome. Yeah, we'll just kick things off, Eric, with a glimpse of your childhood and what growing up for you was like. Were you always kind of curious about like writing and making ideas come to fruition?
Yeah, I was like a books kid, a word nerd. I have been a big reader my whole life. So I don't think my 8-year-old self would be shocked at what my 35-year-old self is now doing. I was super, super lucky to grow up in a small business household too. So I'm like third generation or maybe even fourth, business owner and operator. So we grew up at the dinner table talking about oh shit, how are we going to make payroll? So that I feel extremely lucky to have been kind of raised in that environment and not crazy. It's just small business stuff, but it became normal. And so entrepreneurship didn't feel like this crazy leap away from safety to me. It felt like just kind of what you do when you grow up. So I started, I was selling candy out of my locker as a kid and running a little taxi company, getting paid to give kids rides to school and selling t-shirts in college. So I've kind of been a reader, writer, and a hustler from kind of the beginning, which I feel very lucky to have been born into, because I feel like for people that grew up with accountant parents, that feels like this crazy impossible leap that they're held back from doing.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, like many people, you went to college, you went to Michigan State, which is typically where those types of career paths formulate. What was your experience like there, and what were you kind of thinking about post-grad?
State was cool. It's a very big school, and they had a bunch of interesting startup stuff was kind of happening there at the time. For people that are still in college, or even choosing it, one of my very few regrets in life is not going to the best school I possibly could get into, mostly because that really chooses your peer group. So if I got a time machine transportation option, I would shake my 19-year-old self and be like, you still have time to transfer to the very best school you can. I think there's a lot wrong with college, but I do think it's a decent collection mechanism for tiers of talented people, and there's talented people at every school, and if you can always find them, but there's definitely a difference in graduating from or even going to and becoming friendly with a community college cohort of people versus a state school cohort of people versus a top 100 state school cohort of people, and your peers end up defining so much of at least the first 5-6 years. You can always network your way into different groups and different industries, but it's just harder if you don't have 10 people that you went to college with deep trust that are already in that industry or a few years ahead in that industry or something like that. So this is a way to make your future life easier. And studies wise, I was not particularly I don't know, I didn't take super hard classes or do a crazy physics or math degree, but I should have. It's really hard to teach yourself physics. It's not hard to teach yourself business or entrepreneurship or economics. So I think use college to teach yourself the hard shit and figure out the rest as you go.
And do you have any lessons, any hard shit that you learned in college that you think, helped you later on, whether that's stuff from friends, whether it's things in the classroom? What was a big takeaway?
Just high agency over finding your people. like do the work to find and collect your people. I mean, I'm still like your first kind of year or two in college, you're just like become friends with the people around you in your dorm or whatever. And you know, kind of second, third, fourth year, you try to find the people that are like into the same, either, you know, either studying the same stuff or building the same stuff or going into the same line of work, or even with the same like longer term life goals. So you just have to kind of make that leap away from like the comfortable people you either, you know, knew in high school or met your first year, and like find the people that you want to sort of transition out of college with. Some of those people that I've found and became close friends with, I'm still really, really good friends with, you know, 15, 20 years later. We've invested in each other's companies. We're still like deeply close friends. It's not like, you know, all my friends from college are just drinking buddies now who, like, you know, we went off and did vastly different things. And so I think that was like rewarding and fun thing to do that you can do at any school, that I'm really, really glad that I, you know, my 20-year-old self managed to pull off.
Awesome. I had a question also because agency, that's something that you brought up. I know that's something that Naval definitely champions as well. And, you know,
Oh, yeah.
you touched on it in your book. What does agency mean for people? Like, can you even describe agency to our viewers who haven't maybe heard that term before?
Oh yeah, dude. It's a fantastic thing. Okay, so the best resource on this is highagency.com. My buddy George Mack wrote like a giant essay that I am going to throw tantrums until he publishes as a book, because I think he's the best at answering this question, and it's a very important question. So I will paraphrase some of it, but like definitely just go read that essay. High agency is a mix of being like a little disagreeable, having a bias to action, being resourceful. The best test is like, who would you call if you were stuck in a third world prison? That is like, this person will figure it out. Like it is the person who kind of happens to life rather than just letting life happen to them. And the sooner you can like change that frame and understand that you're capable of changing your situation, the sooner you start to like be a real player in the world, and the sooner you can start to make really interesting shit happen, right? So imagine like a practical example from college is like, there's a bunch of people that just like go to the career fair with a stack of their resume, hand out their resume to 10 companies, get 2 offers, and choose the one with a higher thing, and they end up like in a machine for new grads, and they learn a commoditized skill set that isn't super interesting. Versus like, and I know people in college who did this, who like asked around and got coffee with their professors to find out who the most successful small business owners in their college town were, then got coffee with those small business owners, found the one that they jived with the most, and was like, can I come work for you as your right hand, learn everything, and like maybe you help me buy a business, maybe I run one of your businesses, maybe. And it's like, you know, are you willing to veer off the path and do something that others aren't already doing, that isn't as obvious to do, that's a more like aggressive move towards getting the life that you want, not just selecting from the options that are put in front of you.
No, that's a great example of agency. And I mean, you're a prime example of using that exactly, where you obviously wrote a book for Naval.
You can just do things. Like, that's
You can-
agency. You can just
like,
do things.
Like, and that was the first book you ever wrote, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's insane that you can just do that. And I guess right out of college, you went and worked at Zarly for 10 years or so. And what was the thinking there? Like, clearly that launched your career into something amazing, but what was the thinking of joining there, and what did you kind of learn?
Yeah, that actually had started a few years before, like that option. This is another like somewhat I don't know. I think I did an okay job of being high agency in college and just like creating options. So I was on Twitter. I submitted a thing to try to win a scholarship to an event that was like $100, but I had no money. And I won a free ticket to go to this event called Startup Weekend, which is like a weekend hackathon in Detroit. Went there. Our team ended up winning because I just found the smartest programmer and joined his team. And he was introverted, so he didn't want to pitch it. So I was like this not particularly smart 20-year-old kid pitching like this genius programmer's idea. And so I ended up looking very smart, which is a fantastic hack if you can pull it off. And then the guy I met as a result of winning that was running an incubator was running this huge nonprofit in Kansas City. So I flew to Kansas City for the kind of summit of the startup weekend. Told him I wanted to come work for him. Ended up hosting a startup weekend at my college at Michigan State in East Lansing. And that was a really cool event. I met a bunch of really interesting people there. And so that kind of like basically volunteering, like going to events that like actual existing adult professionals are at, not just college kids, and then volunteering to host an event, sort of got me those relationships that I was going to go work at a nonprofit. And the guy I was going to work for, basically the day I showed up, was like, I'm going to quit my job and go start a company. Like, do you want me to finish hiring you here and you stay here? Or do you want to come with me and start this company? And I was like, fuck it, let's go. Like, we're doing it. So I basically left school. My plan was to do 3 degrees in 5 years, but I just left after 4 years and joined this company. And I viewed it, I grew up in Detroit. I viewed this as my ticket to like be in a real San Francisco startup. And so I just wanted to like get in that ecosystem. I really, really liked the founder, who's still like a very close friend, Bo Fishback, and partner in my fund. And so we still live like a mile apart and still hang out. So it's really amazing to see like how those dominoes kind of fall. But I knew I just wanted to be like, and in this particular era, San Francisco was like the ultimate and the only startup ecosystem. I think today there's probably 4 or 5 cities in America where there's like thriving startup ecosystems with really awesome people in it. So I think it's a little less specific, but yeah, you just want to like, especially when you are young and mobile, like just get to the hot action as quick as you can.
100%. That's what Bryce and I are trying to do right now. We just graduated last year and we're on the same path, hopefully.
Hell yeah.
We did want to start by going kind of deep on the Almanack. And I mean, you wrote the book based off a series of transcripts, tweets, and talks from Naval, which he's been doing for years and continues to do on X. And I love the book. It's honestly one of my favorite books. You divide it into 2 sections. You got the first section about wealth, how to accumulate it, and then the second section being about happiness. And these are 2 things that are often mutually exclusive of each other. It's very hard to have both, but Naval's somehow mastered both. And I'm curious, obviously, while at Zarly and growing that, I'm sure you were taking in all this information from Naval. What made you now think, okay, let's go write a book on him. Let's reach out to Tim Ferriss and Naval and let's see where this brings me. How did that all start?
It's super funny how, the classic like Steve Jobs line of like the dots only connect in the rearview mirror. The things I consumed like out of just what I was curious about for 10 years essentially fed my subconscious this idea that then became this book, right? So I'm a big follower of Charlie Munger in particular, even more so than Buffett. And so I read a ton of their books, which a lot of them are like, they really only do annual meetings. And so the books are compilations that are like structured in a bunch of different ways and people writing about them, collecting their ideas. And I also had just read Principles by Ray Dalio, which is another good book. This sort of him looking back at his career, being like, what are the things I figured out and how can I teach them and share them with others? And one of the things he says in there is like, I wish there's a bunch of other people that would write this book about like, how did they do what they did? What are the fundamental driving principles or values? What's the playbook to their unique success? And I was thinking about who I wish would have written that book. And I was like, Naval is fucking awesome. Like I really, a lot of people share a lot of interesting things, but I agreed with a lot of what Naval has said and how he's said it over the years. And I think he's got a really interesting combination of interests and talents and abilities and like outcomes across all these different things, like built companies, invested in companies, built audience, and, family and some level of hopefully psychological peace that it seems like he's worked through, which is not a given when you're also, chasing some of these material successes. So I just realized, the raw material was out there and you could just do things. So I had the format kind of from all the reading that I'd done. I'd been directed, towards Naval a whole handful of times and followed him for 10 years. And it was just like the combination of all those things coming together of realizing, oh, this is a thing that somebody's going to do. I want this book to exist. Like maybe I'm capable of writing it. And of course, I thought it would take 3 months, and it ended up taking like 3 fucking years. So it's a classic, like, it's always harder than you think it's going to be, but once you're committed to it, you just try to see it through. And um, I worked my ass off on it because I really wanted him to be proud of it, and I wanted him to be happy to be associated with it, and like glad that he, gave this kid a shot at producing something out of his work.
And something that's also super interesting to me is that Naval, like I'm pretty sure there's a part in the book where you guys talked about things that can scale. Like that's why social media and these things are important. Code is important. But then in a book, that's also kind of a thing that can scale. When you decided to write a book, was that like almost an insight that you had and that contributed to writing it, or is it just from you wanted to conglomerate all the amazing insights you had for others?
Yeah, it sort of emerged as I was doing it. Like the big famous tweet storm came out actually while I was already working on the book, and so did the Joe Rogan episode. So Naval was like getting even bigger as I was like working on the book, and I was like adding stuff as we went. But yeah, I think that that playbook around leverage in media and code is definitely hugely like influential on my career. And the leverage stuff in particular, like, actually I went and wrote a bunch of blog posts and stuff after to try to like continue to unpack it, because there's only a couple pages on it in the book, and I think it is like a concept worthy of a book in itself. It's so interesting and important and deep and nuanced, and it's how people build careers, it's how people build companies. It explains the wealth and inequality outcomes that we see. There's just like, I don't know. It's just a fascinating topic. So there's a bunch more, I think, to write and unpack there. But it's a really important concept to understand.
Yeah. And if you had to write or unpack something right now, like if we were to give you a minute to write and unpack it, what would be some key things that you'd want to share with people if you were to make a Sparks Notes version of your book, of your future scaling book?
Of the leverage concept?
Of the leverage concept, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's 3 or 4 maybe different ways to use leverage. Some of them are really come naturally to people. Like if they are great with people, they're good people managers. They're good at recruiting. They're good at managing. Some are really good naturally with money and math and ROI. Some are really good with code. Some are really good with media. But all of those different things, like with some very rare exceptions, you will run into a dead end unless you can work with all 4, or you create an organization that can work with all of them. So if you're finding yourself like limited in what you can do, like inventory those options, those different tools, and try to work through all of them. I think one of the others is just having the very like fundamental mindset of trying to improve your outcome to effort ratio. Like that's the defining thing of leverage, right? Like you can't lift 1,000 pounds off the ground, unless you're Eddie Hall, but like with a lever, almost anybody can. And so it is the art of doing the work that makes work easier. And so many people just attack the work. And there's almost like a um, there's a directness to that is counterproductive over the long run, where if you can jump in and make your work easier tomorrow and make it more effective tomorrow, just like we're doing on this podcast, right? Like we're having a good conversation, but like the real benefits to this are the fact that anybody can replay us at any time for zero marginal cost for the next however long, digital recordings exist. And we're going to serve thousands and thousands of people over the coming decade with this 1 hour of effort from our side. And that's a fucking miracle. Like that's incredible. Nothing's going to come immediately after this hour of work, but something will come, for the audience and for us as a result of it. But it takes a little bit of you have to understand the second and third order effects and be comfortable not seeing like a direct immediate ROI on your actions when so many of them are leverage. And the people I know that are like making a ton of money now often go through this like hard lull period of like building up their leverage. To go buy a business means you're going to take a bunch of risk, and you might going to lose some money for a little while or just not get paid. But once you start getting paid, you're getting paid a lot because you have all of these different forms of leverage working for you at the same time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, diving back into the book here, I'm curious to ask. This is advice that was given, 10 years ago, and it's timeless advice. But like throughout your career, is there any particular part of both sections of the book, so section one, wealth, section two, happiness, any key concepts in there that have really stuck with you and made you successful over your career and even outside of your career and life?
Yeah, I mean, the whole book is like, this is what happens when you work on it for 3 years. I feel like the whole book is like tattooed into my head. And that was a great outcome for me. Even if nobody else ever read it, like spending that time with these ideas is really useful. Um, I think leverage is a great sort of lens to see the world through from a career perspective. I think accountability is a really interesting one, actually, like underrated. So being willing to like step into it's really like a willingness to accept risk, both reputational and capital and execution risk. And what you'll find is like there are really, really capable people who just aren't comfortable taking accountability. And the people who are comfortable taking accountability will a lot of times end up hiring the people who are really capable but not willing to take the accountability. And then they make a good team. But like it's a very people are just very interestingly nuanced and understanding, looking for people that are, and knowing that you need to become a person who is willing to take accountability, especially if you want to see like outsized results, um, is a really important thing. Um, on the happiness side, like it's just a big white pill to take that you can control the voice in your head. Um, it's really like you are not born with a set personality. You don't have to live with this roommate, an unhappy roommate in your head. If you do, like these are controllable things and they're skills you can build. Uh, it's not to say it's easy. Like sometimes when people say happiness is a choice, it's really, it's easy to find that discouraging because if you're not, happy in the moment or big picture, you can be like, well, fuck you. Like easy for you to say, right? And so the framing of it as a skill where it's like, oh, you do have to train it. You do have to remind yourself. You do have to come back and do it every day. It will atrophy if you don't tend to the instincts and the sort of behaviors that you want to train into yourself. And like I'm still like, I'm far from a black belt, but at least, the notion is in me that I can self-correct. And it gives me and my wife in particular, like shared language for it too. Like knowing, sometimes if you're not on top of it, like a person who's observing you closely or nearby you in life can be like, you know, have you remembered that you can control this moment in time and how you're reacting to it, and that like we can reframe it, and just building in tiny little habits and triggers that there's a couple of in the book, like brushing your teeth or pausing when the sun hits your skin and stuff like that. That's just little tactical stuff that you're always working on, but it's a good memory, or it's a good thing to help you remember. I mean, it's very easy to forget that you can be like grinding joyfully, I think. And like I'd spent many years not like forgetting that, or at least many days within many years forgetting that, and thinking like that the attitude that you bring, if you deprive yourself of that happiness, that you will be more effective. And there's especially as a leader, I don't think that's true. So I'm still trying to kind of continually refine that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially for the young audience, like there's so much to take away from that happiness section because, you're at the start of your career trying to figure things out. It's so easy to compare yourself to others, which Naval has a great take on comparing yourself to others and not doing that.
Dude, Instagram is the most, like, you could not invent something more perfect to create misery.
Yeah.
Like if you were engineering something to destroy someone's psychology, you could not do better than Instagram. And it's really crazy. Like, so there's a lot of stuff that the intelligent mind, like it's very difficult to use willpower to overcome things rather than like the wise people just control their environment. You can really change a lot about it by controlling the people that you're around, controlling where you put your energy, controlling what has access to you, like through notifications or what's on your phone, or how you relate to your devices and things like that. So just, controlling your leverages, controlling your environment is a super, super high leverage intervention. Especially in the chapter of your life when, you're in your 20s and you can freely choose who you want to hang out with. Like, if someone doesn't give you good vibes, like, great, bye. Like,
Yeah.
I'm moving out, I'm moving on, I'm changing companies, I'm quitting this job. Like, they've got to really, if they're going to weigh on your psychology, they better like really, really be amazing for you in some other, chapter of your life for you to put up with it.
Yeah. And I don't want to spend too much time on the social media part, but such a good point. What, obviously, you got to be very careful about where you're getting all your information and what you're consuming. Like, do you recommend deleting Instagram? Because I think about that sometimes, but then I'm like, but I am missing out on, some key information out there, what's going on with my friends. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, my addiction is Twitter, so it's easy for me to not be on Instagram and to delete it. So I don't have it on my phone. I check it rarely. I don't even post much content on there, honestly. Um, I think Instagram is a more visual, and so it's a little bit more insidious in that, like, you're creating a self-image against literally the hottest people on earth, the hottest and richest and most successful people on earth, which
Yeah.
by the way are faking everything. And now it's just like crazy, even crazier AI stuff that like may or may not be real at all. So my rule is generally just like follow people I'm learning from or follow people that I know in real life and stay the fuck off the discover tab
Yeah.
if at all possible. I wish they would let you delete it. They don't. That's why I don't like have the app, because an endless scroll of like tits and cheeseburgers is just like not a thing that any of us need to have on our phones. So I think it's a really like, I do use Twitter a lot. If I notice it's consuming me, like I delete it and just like break the habit. I put my phone in black and white. I use it when I'm at a computer, but I try to not, have it out all the time. Incredible things in my career have come from being on social media. So I know really, really happy and successful people that aren't on it at all.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's totally possible, but it's just different. It's a different game. I don't want to be like old man yells at sky. But I think it's, you just want to make sure it works for you, not you work for it. And it's really easy to just get like absolutely one-shotted by the algorithm. And I think that's only going to get crazier with AI.
Yeah, the algorithms are just getting better and better, and it becomes more addicting. And like, and I would think I think of myself as someone who like I know this, like I know people work every day tirelessly to like social engineer this, but still I'm on Instagram. Sometimes you do doom scroll and like these things do happen, and it's like it happens to everyone.
Yeah.
But
I mean, and
yeah,
the polarization that happens,
yes,
and like
yes,
you see people get radicalized by the algorithm, whether
yeah,
it's, into like an unhealthy eating disorder situation or an unhealthy
yeah,
political situation or just an unhealthy, like, or into literal terrorism. Like,
yeah,
these
yeah,
are crazy rabbit holes. And I'd make it a general rule of life to try not to swim too close to a whirlpool, right? Like,
yeah,
whether that's drugs or alcohol or extremism of any sort. And I just know those are optimized for that and not to make you a better person. None of the algorithms are trying to make you what you want to be.
yeah,
They're just trying to extract as much of your attention as they possibly can, and they're ambivalent as to how they do it. And it is really, going back to the happiness thing. Like, one of Naval's rules is like avoid news. We've seen like sort of the like news is a lot less nutritious than it was 40 years ago when we were all watching like one nightly broadcast for 40 minutes that was like, held to an interesting journalistic standard and unbiased. Like, that shit's just different now. So it's hard to find, those
yeah,
trustworthy sources.
I just wanted to hear kind of the story of how you got Naval's buy-in on this, and like how do you even reach that guy? Like, I can't imagine he's reading his emails himself. Like, how did you get in contact with him? And then obviously Tim Ferriss forwarded the book too. Like, there's just
Yeah.
insane credibility, and I don't know, like, how the heck did you do this?
Uh, No, yeah, emailing Naval does not work. He's got an amazing autoresponder that's like, I'm not going to see this email. I'm off living my life. So this was it was a happy accident, to be honest. Like, I thought of a pun, and I was like, I was listening to the Shane Parrish interview he did on the Knowledge Project, and I think it's like one of the greatest podcast episodes of all time. He's done an awesome one with Chris Williamson since the book came out, which is really, really good. But both of those were like, so I was just sitting there thinking about, the book that I wish Naval had written, and I just like pulled out my phone at 10 o'clock, and I was like, what if I wrote the Book of Knowledge? And like, collected all his most useful ideas, or his biggest podcast transcripts, and like, I like tweet and went to bed. And I woke up to find that like he had retweeted it, and 5,000 people had answered like, oh my God, yes, please do it. By the way, also like a few thousand people were like, shut the fuck up, Eric, that's a terrible idea. So I was right, but it just goes to show like there's always haters, even of an obviously great idea like this. So it was really, yeah, I mean, and from there, he's just said, I'm happy to provide whatever you need. And the only unique thing I had was an export of his Twitter history. Everything else was public. And so I'm glad I had his kind of thumbs up, but that's what part of what I love about Twitter is like, you can basically, it's a group chat for the world, and like you can at anybody you want, and like your odds aren't always great, but like you can at least get a message to them, and it's a thing they check, and other people are going to see it. And if other people are like, it's almost like you can get your cold email upvoted, right? Like it's a pretty
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Like if you send Mark Andreessen a cold email, but if 500 people like it and are like, yeah, Mark, look at this guy, he's really smart, check this out, this is a good idea, like you can maybe make some stuff happen. But I'm super grateful that he kind of took a shot at it. I have no like unique special connection to Tim Ferriss. That was just like him and Naval are close, and I think after 3 years of me showing my work to Naval and just like seeing how much I put into this, I think he felt good about making that request. And because it's such a weird, unique project, we give away millions and millions of copies for free. Like Tim was willing to,
It's amazing, yeah,
to do it, yeah, which has been really, really cool. I'm super grateful to both of them.
And was it just like an iterative process with him? Like you send a copy, edit, send a copy, and that must have been scary. Like I'm intellectually scared of that guy for sure. Like
it was a really useful tool, and it's something I actually like think about now. I essentially had like an audience of two, right? Like I wrote the book I wanted to read, that I wanted to exist, and I wanted Naval to be proud to be associated with it. And so like I was also and am like, he's really sharp, he's got really high standards, he's got a really high bar, and I wanted this to go over that bar and for him to be proud to be associated with it. And so that's why I worked my ass off on it. And I just found a new level of like perfectionism for this project that like I don't usually have for other stuff in my life. I'm a like 80% as fast as possible, okay, on to the next one like guy generally. And this was something that I just kept working on. And I think it shows. And that's part of what, I think sometimes when I'm writing a book of just like clawing my way up the power law, if you want a good outcome, those small incremental changes from 99% to 99.9 to 99.99% can have, huge 5, 10, 20x changes in the eventual outcome. So I think there's returns to perfectionism and stuff like this.
That's a good line. There's returns to perfectionism. I like that a lot. There's another part of the book that I wanted to touch on where you talk about a bit about products and services. So products being selling like, I guess, units of something, and services being usually some trade-off for time or money that's like capped by hours.
Yeah.
I'm very curious now, like, you've been on or I think on your podcast, you've talked about AI, you've shared some of your thoughts here. How do you view this relationship between products and services, and specifically with AI? I've started to hear a lot of talk with regards to AI taking on services. So how do you view products and services changing over time, especially as it relates to AI?
Yeah, I think generally there's been a lot of success turning services into products in software kind of broadly, and AI is going to unlock a lot more of those. I now run a publishing company, right? So like it's a service business. We are already seeing AI change a lot of the workflows and some of the work itself. I think we're still, a book is a really big thing that you need to get a lot of stuff right all along. So I think it's going to be, depending on the service, like hybrid for quite a while. I think we're seeing small like micro sites and micro tools pop up where it's like, this is a fully productized way to update your alt image tags for your SEO across your whole website. Like push this button and the AI, I wrote an agent and a set of instructions and it'll like do this for you. And that's a thing that used to be a service. It's now a product. Behind the scenes, I think, you might see law firms, accounting firms increasingly use them. It takes a lot for a product or for a service that complex to be like fully productized. So I think some of the progress may be hidden for a little while. And depending who you talk to, like I feel like there's law firms that are, using AI for 30% or 50%, but still billing the same hours and the same hourly rate. And so like they're just capturing a higher margin, but it doesn't look to anybody like AI is making an impact there yet, because it's not it's not lowering prices, it's not creating new consumer surplus. It's just adding more profit to the law firms. That'll come down through competition, I think. But there's a couple different ways to attack it. So, if you're just like an indie hacker, I think there's a bunch of stuff that is newly productizable that used to be a service, and that's a really like rich pool to go fishing in. But yeah, there's such cool stuff that's just newly possible. That's really, really fun.
I think it's time we ask you about Scribe, because you are the CEO of Scribe, and I've already heard it on a podcast. But how did you get into that? How did you get into that position? And what was it like? I guess going from like a curator and author to a builder.
Yeah, this is a cool story, I think, because it shows like most of the people that I know who are CEOs basically built their company around them from just them from the beginning. And especially like, friends now in my 30s, seeing people start companies when they're, 23, 25, 28. And now they're pretty big companies. And like, there's a great route to go and they know where every brick of that thing is. The other path is like work your way up at a company and, kind of over the course of 10, 20 years or whatever, like become the CEO as the person retires. I took like a very weird side door where I was very fortunate to like, one of the rabbit holes I went down was kind of making a bunch of investor friends. One of them was Brent Beshore and Shane Parrish. And I learned a ton from them about this kind of like, it's not quite private equity. They call it permanent equity now, but it's like the art of buying small businesses. Sometimes boring businesses, sometimes fun ones, but like, it's like below the big world of private equity and funds and stuff like that. And it's like, how plumbing companies transact or laundromats or whatever. There's a lot more influencers and stuff about this now than there used to be. And you see people, doing that kind of stuff all the time, but I've been learning about it and reading the books for a long time. And this is another case where like what I just happened to have read for 10 years turned out to be really handy in one particular moment. So the publisher that I used to publish the Almanack of Naval was, Scribe Media, which is founded by Tucker Max, who is also a legendary like OG blogger to book guy and has sold millions and millions of copies and he's fucking hilarious. If you haven't read his old stuff, it's great. A little bit of a notorious bad boy figure in the literary world, but he started.
What does it mean to be a bad boy in the literary world? What is that?
Oh, dude! I mean, his books are all like his first book was called "I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell," and it's just a bunch of stories about him like going out drinking heavily, getting arrested, insulting people. Like it is the least woke shit you've ever seen in your entire life, and it's like a caricature. It's like he's like I was unwell, but I was having a great time. And like, it is funny to read. It is meant to be comedy. It's an extreme version of like things that really happened. The books are still sold and like the stories are still up on his website. And when my buddies and I were like, 16, we printed them all out and passed them around. And it was like before there even was a book. And it was just like this word of mouth phenomenon. And there's just nothing like it. Like there's a bunch of people that read those books and who have never read another book in their lives. But like it was actually really funny, laugh out loud. Like it's an R-rated movie in a book, which like you just don't see very often. And his voice was really unique and his writing was great. Anyway, he got a ton because he was such a successful author. He got a ton of people asking him like, how can you help me write a book? How do I get my publishing deal? How do I make progress through this world? How do I use my book? How do I get an editor? All that stuff. And so he started Scribe Media maybe 10 years ago now, a little more, and grew it. And him and his buddy, Zach Obrant, who is now like a core dev at Ethereum, both like brilliant dudes, built this company up and built it up into a really good place. And they both stepped back, they're founders, they were ready to go do other things. And they sold this company to this guy who took over as CEO and was just not carefully watched and really took advantage of the situation. I think small mistakes turned into big mistakes, turned into what looks, at least from what I have seen and heard, like allegedly just outright malicious fraud. And he just destroyed this entire company. I mean, tens of millions of dollars of value like evaporated overnight, and he hid it from everybody until the last minute. And so there's this like heinous bankruptcy where a bunch of people lost money, a bunch of people lost jobs, investors lost money, like people who prepaid for services lost money. And I was one of those people. So I was an author who was working with Scribe on my second book, and I lost 5 figures personally in this bankruptcy. But I loved this company. And I was like a big believer and an evangelist for them. And I thought what they do is really, really important to like counterbalance the power of traditional publishing, which is really like gatekeepers who can publish what. And our model is like, we will help anybody publish almost anything at the very highest level of quality, and they can retain full control of their rights, their copyrights, their finances, et cetera. So we're like Shopify for versus Amazon for publishers, if you want to like use that analogy. Sure. And so I just started making phone calls to people that I know who are these guys who buy companies, investors, private equity, permanent equity, people that are just looking for these kind of opportunities. And these guys Enduring Ventures, Sieva and Xavier, who are both like great follows on Twitter, and who I'd met at a couple different conferences I've been to. This is just like going to random conferences and meeting people who are interesting and doing cool work, and kind of volunteering to make some phone calls. Like nobody asked for this. Nobody assigned me to it. I just kind of saw this opportunity. This company had collapsed, and I was like, I'm going to see if I can help them. So I started calling around to the people that buy companies, and these guys were interested. They had a background in publishing. They had a background in sort of distressed situations. So they flew to Austin. They met with the bank. They met with the team. They looked at the business, and they were like, yeah, this is, this is a business that runs, that should make money. The customers were really happy. This guy just drove it off the cliff, and this is a recoverable thing. So they bought the assets out of the bankruptcy, started a new company, hired some of the people over. And I was kind of like, oh, cool, great. I'll go back to just like writing books and investing. And then they called me and said, like, we bought this company. Now we need somebody to run it. We think that should be you. Like, you brought us the deal. You have been an evangelist for this company. You have some like operating experience. You're a creator who gets this, and you're a customer, like a happy customer of the products. You can tell the story of the company and be like like eat your own dog food example. And I was like, that is a hard left from where I thought I was going, but let me think about it. So it took a couple of days and talked to my wife, and decided to kind of take this jump into my first CEO operating role. And I'm almost 2 years in now, and we're heading in the right direction. I'm still learning. It's slow feedback loops to like grow a business. At least the good feedback loops are slow sometimes, but it's been a really cool like kind of side door into this experience. Not having to not raising venture, not starting my own company, but still finding myself sort of leading one and building one. On the one hand, in the middle of a dumpster fire that somebody left. On the other hand, on a really solid foundation that Tucker and Zach had built over the course of the 8 years they ran the company. So it's a unique situation, but there's a lot of stuff out there that's like that. And, these are networks and kind of situations you can find yourself in if you have the right luck surface area that you've cultivated, over the course of the years.
I'm very curious as well. So when the company was in a distressed state versus now, I'm sure there was a lot of changes you made to the company's perhaps strategy, The biggest thing was getting the old CEO out, obviously. But I'm curious what your KPIs are. How did you measure success, and how did you work towards this to make sure you got the company back on the right track?
Yeah, it's an interesting sequence of KPIs, right? Like you can't make everything healthy immediately overnight. And so my approach was very much like, the team had just been through this like traumatic event, right? And the customers have been through this traumatic event. And the nature of the business is that it sort of builds back up over time. So like I knew we weren't like the finances weren't going to look good for a while, but we needed to rebuild our reputation as quickly as humanly possible. So it was a lot of like, there's a lot of time with the team. It's a lot of sort of showing them, letting them get settled into like a new kind of leadership, especially when they'd just been burned by somebody who'd been like very, very like showy about trust building and having values and all this stuff. Like it's not like he was obviously lying. It's like everybody felt good until all of a sudden it was gone. And so that's a tough thing to overcome. And the other is just about doing like really excellent work from the very beginning. So regaining our reputation for high quality, and helping the team feel really, really safe and secure, and getting the message out in the best way we could to, past customers and previous customers and future customers that might write books with us that like, we are getting back to the message of quality. The people that are here are not responsible for the thing that happened before. They're not the people who caused it. We're just kind of going back to the fundamentals and nailing that, and just having the patience to, stay tight on the fundamentals and do the good work. And let you can't really rush getting that reputation back. You just have to earn it. And the more you like clamor for it, the faster it's going to kind of squeeze through your fingers. So you just got to be patient and let people come around in their own time and do everything you can, but not push.
You have your foot dipped in the VC world. You're a GP at Rolling Fund. How glamorous is this industry? Because I mean, it seems a lot harder than how a lot of people paint it. Bryce and I always joke around, like maybe we could, turn this into a Harry Stebbings, start a fund, and like that could happen one day. But like, I'm curious, like what have you learned over your term being involved in this space? Like, I don't know if anything sticks out, like a favorite investment or a biggest learning, or how to remain competitive in such a saturated industry.
Yeah, it's a really it's a weird industry. It's a very weird industry because like the story of VCs from the founder's perspective, and like I've been there, right? Like there's just this like stack of fish all the way up. And so like you would think founders have high empathy for VCs would have high empathy for founders who are fundraising, because so much of their job is fucking fundraising. Like they got to go get the money from somewhere. It's not theirs. So like they're trying to pitch limited partners and endowments and institutions and like convince them that they have unique deal flow. And then they get the money and then they look at founders. And then so like, it's a very weird thing. And some VCs are like, just unbelievably douchey about everything. And unfortunately, like the incentives are for like public displays of douchery, because you need to be like branded and publicly known as the person who funded this thing. And so you kind of look like you're trying to take credit or be associated with this thing that you didn't actually have that much to do with the success of, but it's like, that's how you grow your fund and that's how you get additional deals. And so there's some unfortunate like dynamics to like how the whole thing works, and a lot of people don't do themselves any favors with like how they treat founders, but it's a job that sucks in that you have to say no so many times for every time you get to say yes, even if you really love founders and even if you do truly love what they're doing, and even if you really want to help all of them. There's just never enough money to go around to like everybody who deserves some of it, which is a painful thing to deal with. Glamorous, I don't know. I mean, some of the events like take place at nice hotels or whatever, and it's a good business model, right? Like if you can actually get 2 and 20 on a big amount of money, like you're doing extremely well as a GP. But most of the work is actually just like Zoom calls and deck reviews and more fucking Zoom calls and lots and lots and lots of emails and calls. So the people that are doing it at a high level are either like break Naval, right, who just like has crazy inbound deal flow, and he can just kind of like pick from the things that are coming to him. If you're on the come up in this industry, it is a brutal grind. I don't think it's probably as stressful as founding something. I don't think it's like nearly as heroic or anything like that. I think there's something really important. I know like VC gets a bunch of shit from founders, and somewhat rightfully so, but in the world of capital, I think venture is actually like extremely important, like morally and logistically for the future of civilization. And I think, I'm always like dogging on real estate investors who are just like running around buying properties and getting loans and just like not changing anything, or like public stock portfolio guys. It's just like, you're totally fungible, right? Like everything in the world would be the same with or without you, most likely. Whereas like venture is actually giving money to the builders at the frontier. And so I view everyone in venture as like an ally in the mission to just like get more capital to the builders. Like, I don't want anybody starting a startup to be overly constrained or slowed, or for some scientific discovery to not get commercialized, or for some new factory to not get opened because we as a collective industry like couldn't raise enough and get it to you. There's always a debate about like how effectively you do that and how much volume there should be and how much is counterproductive. And there's a bunch of lemming like behavior in there. I got into this just investing in my friends, like seeing friends start companies that I was like, fuck, you're a genius. Like, I wish I could clone myself and go work for you because I don't have any money. And like, I want stock options in that thing. Like, when you're, young and broke, the only way you can get equity is to go work at a company. And even that like vests and it's slow. And so, my first angel investment, I saved up for a fucking year to get $5,000. I'm not an accredited investor. $5K is not even worth most people taking a check from to like do the paperwork. And so I had to like talk my founder into investing in a company so that I could secretly buy some of his investment from him to like, cause he was accredited. So it's this whole like thing, to just support friends and feel like, you've got like, because it's risky as a, if you only got equity in one company, like you better be big on that company or have a lot of control in it. So when you're employee, 20 of a company that you're like, maybe will work, maybe won't, and that's your biggest holding and you don't have any control, like that's a scary place to be. So it makes sense to try to kind of diversify or invest in a fund or two here or there, if you can get the money saved up. So I don't know, that's probably a long ramble, but like this started as investing in friends and then starting a fund to do just bigger checks. And now I've just got a different taste for like funding the craziest companies I can find that other people are not willing to do, or just be like really early to the point where you're actually like a really useful signal when you're like the first 2 or 3 checks before there's a lead investor. Those are my favorite ones to do, because then I don't feel fungible and I feel like I'm actually like meaningfully helping a founder, kind of hit an inflection point.
And you brought up something interesting to the point of where, like, as a VC, in a way, you have a say on what the world will see in a few years' time. Like, you get to place those bets. You can kind of shape or push something into the world to a degree. What's something that you want to see in the world in 10 years, 20 years' time? Perhaps you're investing in it now. Perhaps you haven't made that investment yet. But what's something that you want to see in the world?
Oh, dude, I mean, one of these like energy, I think, is one of the most interesting things right now. That there's a whole green tech push like 15 years ago, maybe more, that like didn't pan out. But I think we had like the .com bubble, and then all the really big companies got built, and I think we had the green tech bubble, and now all the really big energy companies are getting built. So I think there's really cool stuff happening there. I mean, we invested in Allo Atomics, which is like high scale manufacturing of nuclear reactors, microreactors, specifically for data centers. So like as the AI piece takes off, they're going to try to build a bunch, and the nuclear is one that it's like money where my mouth is. Like, I think nuclear is really important. I think we should be building a lot more of it. I think we fucked up for the last 70 years by not building more of it. So that's one that's huge. Energy is just such a fundamental piece of the cost of everything, that if we can make energy more abundant and cheaper by any means necessary. I think Casey Hanmer is one of the most underrated people in Silicon Valley right now. So he started Terraform. He's been charting the like declining cost of solar photovoltaic for a long time, and he's building a company around using solar power to basically pull carbon out of the atmosphere and turn it into methane, CH4 synthetic natural gas, which, if true, one, ends climate change because we can profitably pull carbon out of the air. So like, don't worry about that anymore. Fly your private jet, use your aerosol, like whatever you want to do, eat all the beef you want. And second, makes oil drilling less necessary and fracking less necessary, which is bad for the planet, and makes it easier, cheaper than batteries to like store the value created by solar. So there's a lot of evolution that's going to change through energy. I mean, we've invested in some truly crazy stuff, asteroid mining, this giant 10-kilometer long like air cannon that'll like shoot cargo up into space, even cheaper than a rocket. Some genetic engineering stuff, like, I don't know. I love just meeting founders who are building stuff that's not really been built before and that nobody else is crazy enough to be attempting. I think those are the companies that become the giant companies of today, right? Like when Sam started OpenAI, there weren't serious attempts at AGI. When Elon started SpaceX, there weren't like a bunch of people working on rockets seriously. So I try to stay far enough ahead that, we look legitimately insane to all the kind of normal herd venture investors. But there's always founders, popping up who are really on the edge of stuff. And they're the really fun ones to learn from too.
Very cool. Awesome.
Eric, I know we're over time, but do you have like a couple more minutes, or are you?
Yeah.
Do you need to go? Okay.
No, let's do it.
I was just because on the topic of Elon, I did see. This could be true. Correct me or not, but it looks like your next book is the book of Elon Musk. Is that true?
Yeah, I've been working on this one for many years. I mean, I think he's just unbelievable, like unprecedented. Maybe the greatest founder of all time, but certainly the greatest living founder.
And is this similar process to the one with Naval? Like, are you working with him? Like, tell us about that project. That's cool.
Yeah, I have no like special access, but I have approval. Yeah, it's a really similar dynamic. I do want to make, my goal is to make the most useful books possible. So, I'd read the Isaacson biography. I loved it, but it's 500 pages of his entire family history. And my book is like 200 pages of all of the best ideas Elon Musk has ever shared and like how you can use them in your life. And so I think, having a handbook to all the shit that he's figured out from working on the crazy stuff that he's done, I hope we can help like thousands and thousands of founders achieve things that seem totally fucking impossible today by, picking up some of the pages from his playbook and running with them.
That's cool. I look forward to that book. That's really cool.
Yeah, I like how it's a very different approach than Walter Isaacson too. Yeah, I imagine it'll look a lot like the Almanac, which I hope it does. That'd be easy to digest. Just one last question we have. I told you we have a young audience of people who are ambitious and maybe they just graduated college or they're young professionals. What kind of advice do you have to them? People who want to maybe have a career similar to yours where you're involved in VC, get involved in startups, and maybe even be a founder one day. What's the best way to kick that off and make that happen?
I'm a bad example currently because I'm doing too many things at once, which is not my intention, but just kind of happened. I would find the very best people you can who are thinking the longest term and go just all in with them. Just get in the smartest room you can and learn as much as you can from those people and give your all to, a project that seems worthy based on what you know now. Just continuously learn, like follow your own curiosity and constantly learn stuff. That habit has sort of made me it put me in a really unique situation that I couldn't possibly have foreseen, like every couple of years, just like naturally. But you want that to emerge organically. So just follow your interests with intensity, get in the best groups you can, get in the best rooms or companies you can. Don't try to do too many different things at once, especially once you find something that's worth like going all in on, like just go all in on it, for at least a while. But life is long and you get a lot of, different projects to work on, and just take care of your reputation, over the long haul. And you'll be very surprised how not just your own growth, but the growth of the people alongside you will really come to define a lot of, what happens over the course of your career.
That's great advice.
Good advice. Yeah. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thanks
coming
so
on.
much for joining us, Eric. I mean, not a lot of people like you have time to dedicate an hour to young people like us, so I really appreciate it.
The young people are the only ones that matter. I feel like this is a really common. It is easily forgotten that like most people who do really big things start when they're young, and just nobody knows to, like, nobody understands enough. Not enough other people take them seriously until they're like in their 30s and already huge. But like people that take young, ambitious, hardworking, smart people seriously from early on are rare and important, I think. And you want to, find those people and filter for them. And great VCs and great investors are generally like that, right? Like the Teal Fellowship is like that. 1517 Fund is like that. We aspire to be like that. We don't always get it right, but don't wait too long to work on what you think is the most important thing. And people are very, very surprised a lot of times when you look back how young people were when they started their, what became a really, really big thing.
Well, thank you so much, Eric.
You guys better tell me what you're building when we're offline. I gotta know. Don't hide anything from me here. This is
for sure. We'll stop the episode and then we'll share some more. We'll share some more.
We can cut the recording now. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Venture Podcast, guys.
Thanks for double teaming me.